Hello friends, Mr. E here, and today we are continuing with the Havoc series, how to best Havoc, how to climb ranks, and have fun in this endgame mode, but with perhaps the most important tutorial I can provide you. We are going to be covering the secret hidden mechanics within Havoc today. The stuff that what people call the AI director can do to throw a wrench in your plans, to spawn in surprise bosses and hordes, and really get the best of you if you are unaware of what it is capable of. And that's our whole goal today. We want to know what tricks it has up its sleeve, and if we know all those tricks, well then we're going to be well on our way to counteracting them, preempting them, and we're going to win much more. And this, of course, doesn't mean that you can just win for free if you have no skills. As G.I. Joe taught us, knowledge is half the battle, and I would say it's about right. Knowledge is about half the battle. The other half is going to be your mechanical skill. So your mechanical skill, of course, will be increasing organically across your time playing as you scale up, as you get to higher difficulties, as you play more. But your knowledge, I can teach you that. I can give you a huge jump start on that right now. And before we get into it, I should say another great way to jumpstart your knowledge, if you really want to see more about how players who play this a lot think about their games, is you can see myself or play on stream, where I'm going to be giving generally breakdowns of my decision making. I also have a series of videos I post for members where I go through a Havoc 40 as a class with a certain build, and I'll explain pretty much every decision I make along the way when I'm not forgetting to and just rambling about various unrelated horseshit. But anyway, if that sounds interesting to you, thank you for all my members out there. Anyway, let's get underway here. We're going to start with some very basic stuff. We're going to start with the stuff that you can just kind of tell right off the surface if you are paying attention to what's going on, and you can actually find this stuff online pretty accessibly. One of the ways that we can find this is using the solo play mod. I'll put it on the screen for you here. So the solo play mod gives us a little bit of information about what happens as we advance our rank from level 1 all the way up to level 40. You see it over here? These are what's happening to the player. We're going to lose our health. We're going to lose 35% max health, 45 flat toughness, 50% of our toughness regen rate. We're going to have a vent duration and interval increase for venting. You barely don't feel that one at all. And then the ammo gain, perhaps the most impactful of all these, is that negative 60% ammo gain. But let's say you're starting at Havoc 16, that's going to be much less impactful. You're really not going to feel all that much, and this is where many players are going to start. But as you can see, as you scale up over time, this stuff is going to get bigger and bigger. And overall, though, these buffs, since they are happening so gradually, and since they are just very moderate buffs to, or moderate debuffs rather, to your player, it probably won't come into play all that much. Yeah, you might feel the fact you have less health, you can't take as many hits, but hopefully your mechanical skill is increasing alongside your rank, and therefore this won't seem all that bad. Like I said before, the ammo gain is probably the number one that players will likely feel. But there is another set of stuff that we can see what happens here. When you are increasing in ranks, there's also an increase to the enemy densities, the enemy difficulties. And this is a sort of a database you can find on Games Lantern here. So let's say we're starting at that Havoc 16 rank here. We can see that there's an increase of horde spawn rate by 40%. There's a 40% increase to objective event spawns. There's a very modest, like 10 to 15% increase for elite HP, and for the amount of elites that spawn, and how many specialists spawn, and how many ogrins there are. There's a slight attack speed increase or range and melee. But as that goes up, if we're at 25, now we're talking about about a 50% increase to all those things, a 20% increase to elite HP. At a 32, where we're heading up to the 100% elite amount increase, 80% more ogrins, 100% enemy melee attack speed. So you can see here, all these things are mechanical changes that it's just going to make the enemies, every individual enemy, is going to be harder to fight. They are going to have more HP, they're going to attack you faster, they are going to be more aggressive, and you are going to have less health and resources to work with there. And that's really just going to come down to your own personal skill. You're going to have to skill yourself up, and all this system is asking you to do is take less damage and deal more damage. That's it. If you can do that stuff, you can counteract everything here, right? This is very non-complex, is what I would say. It's just something that will happen in the background you won't even really be thinking about. However, there are some other mechanics. There are some hidden mechanics that players might have seen kind of sneaking in, but never really thought about what it's doing. And that is what I really want to focus on today, because these are the things that are going to kill players that even more experienced players just generally seem to not have any knowledge of. This is what's happening in Havoc, because this system it's not smart, but it does have a number of triggers that it can activate that will cause certain things to happen, and that is what you're basically playing against in Havoc. You have to understand exactly when to push, when to pull, when to fall back, when to hold your position. And if you can understand that, you're going to be a massively better player. And a lot of this starts with this condition down here called the Emperor's Fading Light. And you might have seen this if you have ever been on the Havoc menu. Starting at rank 16, the Emperor's Fading Light 1 will appear down here. And this is a huge portion of what causes Havoc to feel so monstrously different than Auric. So, Emperor's Fading Light, it is a very difficult mechanic to wrap your head around, but we need to understand it, and what we're going to do is we're going to go through the things that Emperor's Fading Light can do, and we're going to talk about them one by one, and we're going to explain how you should be playing, how you should be acting to counter this mechanic. Because some of these mechanics are really simple and will just be a mechanical solution, hey, you just get better at doing this and this, and some of them are going to be a tactical solution, which I will impart my best wisdom I can to you today. So let's start with some really simple stuff. Emperor's Fading Light 1 and 2 both have the same effect on Toughness, and that means that your Toughness no longer has a gating mechanic. If you are unaware of what a gate means in like video game terms, when your Toughness is broken, normally there is a 1 second period where any further damage dealt to you is reduced by 90%. So if you have a gunner who's locked onto you who shreds your Toughness and then starts to tuck into your health, well, that first second, you have some time to realize, oh shit, I'm getting blown up. I need to move. I need to do something to regain my Toughness. Maybe I'll press my shout button. Maybe I'll go stealth. Maybe I'll dodge behind this wall, whatever it is. And that can really cut down on a lot of extraneous damage. That is one of the #1 ways that a lot of players who are jumping into Havoc for the first time, when they hit that Emperor's Fading Light 1 at level 16, they are going to get blown the fuck up, because they'll go from a situation where, oh yeah, if this machine gunner shoots me, yeah, he might break my Toughness, but I can probably make it to him and stop him. Now the machine gunner will break your Toughness and they'll cut down your health in about 0.2 seconds. And this is all compounded by the fact that you have less Toughness and health overall, remember? So that is going to really make these gunners way more dangerous, and that's a big part of the reason that many players, especially even high ranks, still consider gunners and small shooters to be among the deadliest enemies, because they can simply rip through your Toughness and punish you from a distance very quickly. And this is compounded by the fact that additionally, small shooters have a reduction in their firing time. So there's normally a gap between when the small shooters have that little flash of light and they'll shoot at you, and that's cut in half with Emperor's Fading Light 1. So obviously these two go together, right? Those small shooters become incredibly more deadly. They fire in those little bursts. So like the first 2 rounds, the first two will break your Toughness, the third one will go directly into your HP. You'll lose a ton of HP to these guys if you aren't paying attention. So immediately, the first thing that we need to do in order to survive with the Emperor's Fading Light, in order to survive against this new threat, is you need to be ensuring that you have good positioning, that we are respecting gunners, that we are evading gunner fire whenever possible. And this is just going to be a mechanical thing here. This is going to be you remembering to bullet butt slide everywhere whenever you can, because you never know when there's some sort of enemy who's looking at you. It's you not charging out in the open when there's gunners thinking you can make it to them, because chances are you can't and they will cut you to ribbons. And it's also just prioritizing and getting rid of those enemies, routing their positions, using cover, using smoke grenades, using whatever it is to disrupt their gunners and take them out, because those become a very high priority target. And this is why your ranged focused characters, like your Skitaris, like your Veterans of the World, should definitely make it their goal to remove as many of these gunner threats as possible. And why tankier characters, like your Ogrins and like your Arbides, very much do benefit from having gunner damage resistance, because that helps with Reapers, it helps with machine gunners. Unfortunately, it doesn't help with those small shooters. Those guys are going to be annoying to everybody all the way through the game. So that is the first thing that falls under Emperor's Fading Light, and it's one that most players will notice immediately. But now let's go on to something that is maybe not so noticeable, but it's definitely something that you will need to change your playstyle around, and you'll need to prioritize different things. And that is the what is called the tension mechanic. So they actually mention this in the description of Emperor's Fading Light, because it reads that the amount of enemies and resistance no longer affects special spawning, etc. What that means is that the enemies are not going to cut you any slack. They're not going to pull any punches if you lose anybody on your team. Normally there is a mechanic in the game when a fight is going well for you guys as players, when all 4 players are alive and not taking any damage, the game knows it can have the throttle full open. You should be able to handle what it can throw at you 100%. And if you are to take damage, or especially if you are to have a player get downed or die, the game eases up on you. It doesn't want to crush you outright in that moment, so it pulls back such that there's still a bit of tension there. It has done what it wanted to do. It hurt your team, it gave you slightly worse odds, but you still want the players to be able to advance, because the ultimate goal in the game is for players to win, but just barely, right? That's so they feel like they fought a good fight. But Havoc doesn't give a fuck about that. Havoc wants to kill you. So Havoc removes this barrier. If a player dies in your 4 versus the world firefight, now everybody that's left in your team suddenly has 33% more stuff they have to fight their way through. So the best case scenario, like the best advice I can give you is don't let your players fucking die. Because if a player dies, if they get caught out and get blown up, now suddenly all those enemies that were supposed to be theirs to kill, theirs to manage, all the contributions they were making to the team are now gone, and you still have to fight your way through the same amount of stuff. And so what should we do about this? Well, this is why I recommend that every character should be running revive speed on their curios. You don't know it's going to matter until it does matter, and this is one that will matter. It cuts a full second off of reviving down players or helping players who are hogtied. It will reduce getting players off of the ground when they're netted, or or off of a ledge as well. The revive speed can simply make the difference. And if you don't get that player back up, if that player dies and is pushed to a further respawn point, your chances of losing the mission just went up dramatically. So the revive speed mechanic is just such an incredibly valuable thing to be able to put on your curios, and especially for zealots who can grab Providence off of the talent tree, which is another 25% revive speed. It makes zealots one of the best revivers in the entire game. They can get out there and get that stuff up. It also gives Skitarii an immense amount of value with their Medicae Servo Skull to send it out there and get those revives in a clutch situation. Yeah, do not let your players get downed and die, and if you're a player who's getting downed and is going to die, try not to do it completely out in the open where everything is going to be able to attack you, and therefore anybody who's trying to revive you, right? Try to, if you're getting blown up, put yourself next to some sort of obstacle or in a way that your team can get to you, and that's why playing very closely with your team is helpful as well. And then there's another mechanic we can exploit here, because when players die, and it will happen, right? Players will get instantly killed on Havoc because of the corruption transfer, because you can take corruption directly to your health from melee, and overhead from a mauler or a crusher can and will instantly kill you. And so if players are dead like that, they'll need to respawn. And this is where you'll need to understand the respawn system, which you can watch. I'll pin a video in the description that I made about this, but basically fall back a little bit, right? Fall back into the previous room, because usually if you're far enough forward, it's going to push that respawn way out in front of where your furthest player is. If everybody falls back, it tends to be more forgiving. Usually there's a closer respawn that your player can spawn in at that you won't have to go through a bunch of uncharted territory to reach. And making that difference, making that little bit of a change that everybody falls back, is simply going to mean you have a player up that much sooner, and you won't have to adventure 5 or 10 minutes without them. It's more respectful to that player, and it gives you a much better chance of winning as well. So yeah, watch my video to see exactly how this works, but basically don't be the last guy on the team who's not paying attention, who's like lingering way too far forward, especially when someone's down, because they're probably trying to fall back and get them to respawn sooner rather than later. Now, this is what we can do to sort of get rid of the fact that the game will try to kill us when we're down players, right? What else can the system do, though? What else can the system do to levy enemies against us? And this is where it gets into the spawns. And the spawns are very different with Emperor's Fading Light. So first of all, when Emperor's Fading Light comes in here, we have a change in the way that hordes spawn. Hordes no longer spawn as you walk through the level and hit certain triggers. Normally they are triggered at events as you're progressing between events, etc. They are scripted in the level, and so once you clear that horde, you can just stand around there forever in normal games, right? You can be like, oh, we finished this event, I need to go hit the bathroom, BRB guys, and nothing will happen. But on Havoc, the game can and will continue to spawn hordes on a timer over and over and over again And there is a pool that it pulls from, but it's a very deep pool, so you can exhaust it, but it'll take far longer than it would take just to complete the mission normally. So the balance that you have to make in Havoc is pushing forward when the horde timer is down, or even while the horde timer is up, and just kind of making the best progress you can during everything, because that horde timer is constantly ticking. At the baseline level of Emperor's Fading Light 1, you're starting at about a 200-second horde timer, so you gotta make that progress in that 3 and some change minutes between those hordes. Make some forward progress in the level, but you gotta be careful, because there are additional things that these hordes can do as well. The hordes can also spawn in elite and specialist compositions, so it's not just going to be those regular ass horde jobber enemies. It can have maulers and ragers and trappers and dogs and stuff in there as well. It can also substitute 5% of all of the specials that spawn will be substituted as a weakened boss, and this has a cooldown. The cooldown is going to decrease when we reach Emperor's Fading Light 2 at level 31, or level 30 rather, but that boss will spawn in, has less health than a typical boss, but it can still be a big disruption to suddenly have a Beast of Nurgle or to suddenly have a Chaos spawn in the fray. And at the same time, to all of this stuff going on, when we're going to have increased hordes and all that stuff, there are still those manual triggers in the level. And this is the thing that you'll have to learn. When you're walking the level, you're going to step over a certain threshold and it can spawn bosses on you. Because the worst case scenario that you could encounter here is, okay, there is a horde timer that just happened, and we start wandering forward, and the first person on the team steps over this invisible line that now spawns in a boss. It spawns in a captain with a shield and with the sword and with the plasma gun, and then the special wave comes in because you just had a horde wave get triggered, and it's spawned in one as a weakened monstrosity, and then both those things are fighting you at the same time, plus the horde. And by the way, also on Havoc, whenever captains or whenever fixed boss spawns get spawned in, any bosses that get spawned in, they summon a horde alongside them too. They're always accompanied by a horde. This is a diagram to show my best practice, what I would suggest you do to counteract as much as possible this sort of boss spawning, because of course the monstrosity, timed monstrosity spawning from special waves and stuff like that, we can't really preempt that, but what we can do is be very careful about when we trigger fixed boss spawns, because we don't want that to happen at the same time, right? So what you should be doing is, as you're venturing through the level, let's say this is our 3 rooms, and we're venturing from room 1 to 2 to 3, right? And we've cleared out room 1, we're headed this way, we clear out room 2, and our team is here in room 2, about to advance into room 3. The way that is probably preferable to is sort of grouped together is to have everyone pretty close together, because that way we can sort of all be seeing what each other are doing. We're all concentrating fire on the same target, but have one person be your dedicated, your point man, your line leader, right? And that way, when you're advancing forward in this formation, you're going to get into this room up here, and there will be a boss trigger somewhere in here. It's hidden. You don't know where it is. It's the same exact spot every single time, so you can learn these, and it's going to be right here hidden. Now, what happens is when your first man crosses this line, he crosses one toe across it, you'll see boss health bar pop up at the top of the screen, and this is where players can make their first fatal mistake, and that would be, okay, well, where should we fight? Well, the people in the back, they turn around and they see that there's enemies back here that are coming towards them, and they're like, no, well, we should just fight right here. We're already in this room. We got a choke point right here, right? We can hold that choke point and we can fight here. Big mistake. And the reason that is a big mistake is because if you're in this room and you start to have this fight, and say my little other man here, he gets kind of pushed out of position. There's a dog and there's a mutant or something. Say he gets grabbed by a mutant and pushed against this wall, and then it throws him over here. Well, guess what? There just so happened to be another boss trigger right there for the twins. You didn't know it, right? It's invisible, but sometimes they can be literally 10 feet apart or even less. And so by fighting in this room, you are exposing yourself to accidentally spawning more stuff. Not only that, but there could be enemies over here on this side of the room, the passive spawns like gunners and stuff who weren't even going to get involved in this fight, but now because they can see you, they're going to start fucking with you. So the best practice, the best thing you should do is, if you are that point man, if you're anybody in the team, as soon as you see this boss health bar pop up here, boom, hit the bricks, get back to the previous room. Go back one room and fight in the previous room that you full cleared. The reason we do this is because now we are out of the way of this room where there could be additional spawn triggers we don't know about. There could be roaming enemies. There could be passive enemies at the top of the room that we have not yet dealt with. We also don't want to go back more than one room, because if you go back 2 full rooms, or about 50 meters in terms of progress on the map, you are going to trigger a reinforcement wave of bulwarks that will come and fuck you. So don't go back too far. That's intended to prevent like massive retreats and abusing the spawn system in that way. So going back one room and just having your fight right here in the previously cleared room gives you the best chances, because now you get a full room to work with. You can get rid of this boss, you can get rid of the horde, and remember, getting rid of bosses, getting rid of hordes in a timely manner, that's how we're going to make the time, right? That's how we're going to make back the time so we can push forward and make distance in between those spawn timers after this. So once we've cleared everything up here, which hopefully should be way easier than fighting in this chaotic new room we haven't explored, now we can go forward, hit that twin spawn that was right there, wrap them up real quick, and then make some distance from there. So that is my recommendation. Fall back one room and fight this out, get rid of the captain, don't wander any further, and be very careful about who is line leading. Don't just be kind of like blindly walking forward, don't be sprinting forward, especially in areas where like, you know, there are potential for boss spawns. And this is why having at least one player on your team who knows the relative spawns and level, because these are learnable. If you have that player, let that player be your line leader. Let that player set the tempo. If you played the same map a number of times, you'll begin to learn them, especially when you have reached close to Havoc 40, because these triggers will trigger like almost every single time. You will know, hey, when we cross over this threshold, there will be a boss spawn. That's just how it's going to be, and you'll have to be ready for it, and you'll strategize around it. So yeah, strategizing for that and making certain that everything is clear, that everybody's together before you cross that threshold is very important. It's also just important to have everyone be ready and aware what's about to happen, that hey guys, there is very likely going to be a boss spawn in the next 2 seconds. Lock in, get ready. This is where we're going to go to fight the boss. We're going to fall back around this corner. Get ready for that. And finally, this brings me to the Emperor's Fading Light 2, which is just a greatly accelerated version of Emperor's Fading Light 1. All the original stuff is staying in there, the spawns being on a timer, the swapping out of enemies with more specials and more elites, the more bosses, the monstrosity bosses, pretty much all that is getting doubled. So that decrease in time between small shooters firing, that is halved again. We're also seeing 10% of all specials be converted to weakened monstrosities, and the game can spawn 2 of these at once now, although it will have that cooldown again after it spawns those 2 at once. Then we will also have a big increase in the amount of stuff this thing can spawn during surge waves, and you'll see a very, very marked increase in the amount of elites and specials coming with those horde and surge waves as well. And we're also going to see way more bosses, way more triggers for hordes, etc. across the course of the run. Because normally, as I mentioned before, there's a timer on how often these hordes spawn. This timer from 200 seconds is now 100 seconds. And you're building up what I would call tokens for the game to spawn a horde much more quickly as you're advancing through the level. So you're pretty much always going to have the hordes. It's much harder at these difficulties to sort of exhaust the tank of enemy reinforcements. You're going to be more or less fighting your way uphill the entire time. And as I mentioned when I was talking about the bosses and the spawn triggers, almost every single spawn trigger is going to be active and trying to murder you, so get ready for that. It's just everything all the way slammed to the wall to the nines. But what I'll say is, if you can reach Havoc 30 and you can beat Havoc 31, 32, etc., you can easily beat Havoc 40, because there's really not that much extra the game can pile on you once you have adapted to Emperor's Fading Light 2. That is the final real hurdle for players in the game. So there you go. There is all the hidden mechanics that exist currently, or at least a rough explanation of them, and look forward to some more breakdowns of what the mutators do and how to counter them, and maybe even some breakdowns of specific maps and how to counter their particular bullshit, because those can be kind of crazy too. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you learned a lot. Get out there and play some Havoc, have some fun. I'll see you on the field. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.